HOA Karen pushed my daughter on the playground. She didn't know I was a DOJ war crimes analyst. I used to believe monsters wore uniforms, camouflage insignias medals, but the day my daughter hit the pavement screaming through her leg braces, I realized some monsters wear pearls and carry clipboards. My name is Elijah Rivers. I'm a war crimes analyst with the DOJ. I've testified in The Hague, reviewed massacres on 5 continents, and studied evil in its most organized form. But nothing prepared me for the hate tucked behind manicured lawns and pastel fences in Willow Springs, California. We moved here 3 months ago for my daughter Lila. She's 9, born with spina bifida. Her mobility is limited, but her joy isn't. She loves swings dogs and drawing cities she'll one day explore on foot. After years in DC, I wanted a quieter life, a fresh start. Willow Springs with its playgrounds and parent newsletters seemed safe. I was wrong. It started with notes, folded and anonymous, taped to our porch railing, improper lawn edging, too many toys visible. Then came the woman, blonde, tight smile, always in pastel, called herself Karen Whalen, claimed she ran the Willow Springs Property Standards Committee. I later learned it wasn't even a legal HOA, just a group of locals trying to control the neighborhood. One Tuesday afternoon, I took Lila to the playground at the community center. She loved the ramp-accessible jungle gym. That day, she was laughing with 2 kids, her backpack full of chalk. I turned for 1 minute, just one, responding to an urgent call about a case in the Balkans. Then I heard the scream. I turned. Lila was on the ground, her leg braces twisted under her, her cheek scraped, the other kids frozen, and Karen standing over her, holding her phone. Smiling, "She doesn't belong up there," Karen said. "We don't allow special equipment on the platforms. It's dangerous for everyone." I froze, not because I was shocked, but because I'd seen this before. That same tone, the tone warlords used, not screaming, not obvious, just pure control masked as order. Dehumanization buried in suburban etiquette. I carried Lila home trembling, not with fear but rage. That night I watched our ring cam footage. It had caught Karen following us, pacing the playground, perimeter, snapping photos of Lila's legs. I went deeper. I began pulling local complaints. I filed FOIAs. I asked colleagues in civilian oversight to quietly dig. And what I found chilled me. Karen and her committee had targeted 4 other families. One autistic boy's swing was destroyed accidentally. A blind girl's guiding markers were painted over, all in the name of neighborhood aesthetics. I posted a simple clip, Karen saying, "She doesn't belong up there," over the image of Lila bleeding. I didn't show her face. Not yet. I let the internet do what it does. By dawn, a parenting advocacy group had reshared it. By noon, a disability rights attorney DM'd me. By sunset, the Washington Post called. Karen tried to fight back, claimed she was the victim, that we had defamed her. She didn't know I'd documented everything, that I'd found receipts, emails between Karen and 2 neighbors discussing how to pressure out families with visible impairments. She didn't know I had evidence admissible in federal court. The school board cut ties with her. Her church suspended her from her youth program leadership. Her own niece, whose child has a speech disability, went public. She humiliated my son too. The niece posted. We never spoke again after that. But this wasn't about vengeance. It became bigger. Local ordinances began changing. The city council passed the Inclusive Playgrounds Act that mandated accessibility protections. I was asked to join the advisory committee. My daughter testified on camera braces and all about how it felt to be pushed because she was different. And Karen, her house sits for sale. No buyers, no bidders. HOA dissolved under state scrutiny. She's become a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered between fence slats. Sometimes at night, Lila asked me if Karen was a bad person. I don't tell her about the psychology of dehumanization or suburban power. I just say, people can forget how to see others. But when enough good people speak up, the truth gets loud. And for once it did. The sound I'll never forget wasn't the scream. It was the metal on concrete clatter of my daughter's leg braces slamming into the pavement. We had been in Willow Springs for exactly 96 days, long enough to memorize the streetlight patterns on Maple Crescent. Long enough for Lila to call it our forever town, but not long enough to understand the cruelty hiding behind curated rose bushes and fake HOA bylaws. It was a sunny Thursday afternoon, the kind of day when nothing should go wrong. I had just finished a remote deposition with a war crime suspect in The Hague. My coffee was still warm in its DOJ mug. Lila tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide and hopeful. Playground, she asked. Please, Daddy. I glanced at my calendar. No meetings for 2 hours. My files were organized. We hadn't had a break in weeks. You've got it, Star Commander. I smiled using her favorite nickname. The playground sat 3 blocks from our rented townhome, nestled between the community center and a row of perfectly trimmed trees. It was billed as fully accessible on the Willow Springs website, a selling point that made us choose this town in the first place. Ramps, soft turf, adaptive swings. Lila had fallen in love with the blue spiral slide on day 1. I helped her out of the car, adjusted her knee locks, and hoisted her backpack over my shoulder. Ready for liftoff, roger that. She beamed. The other kids were already playing, their laughter blending with the chirp of cicadas. I settled on a bench near the monkey bars, glancing occasionally at my phone as she navigated the structure with determined grace. A mother with twins offered me a polite nod. A jogger passed by with earbuds in. For a while it felt normal. Then I saw her, a woman in beige capri and a seafoam blouse. Oversized sunglasses, clipboard. She wasn't watching a child, just pacing, eyes locked on the platform where Lila stood waiting her turn at the slide. She approached the playset slowly like a predator, not wanting to startle the herd. Excuse me, she called up. This platform is for ambulatory children only. We can't have custom equipment interfering with safety standards. I stood heart skipping. Lila looked confused. What's ambulatory? She whispered to the boy beside her. She means walking, he muttered. Karen took a step closer. You're not allowed up there with those things, she added, gesturing to the braces. I was already halfway across the turf. She's allowed, I said, calm but firm. This is a public facility, and she's not breaking any rules. Karen's eyes narrowed behind her sunglasses. I am the rules, she snapped. I'm the chair of Willow Springs Property Standards. We have guidelines. There's no registered HOA here, I replied. Just a Facebook group and a list of complaints. She ignored me, looked back up. Come down now, or I will remove you. Don't touch her, I warned, stepping forward. But I was too late. Karen reached up and tapped the side of Lila's brace with the edge of her clipboard. It didn't look violent, just a nudge, but to a girl balancing carefully, it was enough. Lila's face twisted in panic. Her left leg slipped on the bar. The right one couldn't compensate. Her body tilted and then crashed. She hit the platform edge first, then the turf. Her elbow twisted under her. Her braces clanged on the ground like dropped tools. The silence that followed was deafening. I ran, scooped her into my arms, felt her shaking. Blood on her cheek, her voice shrill with pain. Daddy, my knee. It bent weird. It bent weird. The other parents stood frozen, phones clutched, whispers rising. Karen stepped back. That's what I meant, she said, voice still clipped. This kind of thing happens when I turned on her. Get away from us. She shouldn't have been up there. Get away, she flinched and took 2 steps back, but still held her ground as if the title of Property Standards Chair gave her legal immunity. I carried Lila to the car, heart pounding. As I buckled her in, I looked up and saw a teenage girl across the street pointing her phone at the scene. She hadn't stopped recording. Good. At urgent care, we learned her knee was badly sprained. Her braces were bent out of alignment and would need to be refitted. She wouldn't walk without pain for at least a month. No playground, no art camp, no dance therapy. She cried herself to sleep that night, holding her stuffed owl leg propped on a pillow. I watched her from the doorway, rage boiling under my skin like magma. Then I sat at my desk, opened a fresh DOJ folder on my encrypted drive and titled it WS Karen Civil Harassment, Discrimination Phase 1. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was going to war that night after the house fell silent. I opened the file labeled WS Karen. I hadn't used my DOJ protocols on an American suburb before, but discrimination, no matter how softly spoken, always leaves a trail. I started with the basics. I pulled up the Willow Springs neighborhood site, searched through the so-called Property Standards Committee. There was no legal HOA in the city registry, no municipal charter, no board of directors, just a handful of residents, Karen Whalen chief among them, who had formed a private Facebook group, a printable PDF of rules, and a disturbing amount of influence. It was a neighborhood cosplay, but the damage it caused was real. At 1:32 a.m., I emailed myself a copy of their guidelines for safety and aesthetics, which included phrases like all equipment used by children should meet the aesthetic and physical norms of playground design. Oversized apparatus or devices not approved by the committee may be grounds for intervention. Apparatus, I murmured aloud. That's how she referred to my daughter's braces, but it was what I found next that made my stomach turn. I started searching keyword strings from Karen's posts: visual interference, special equipment, unfamiliar behavior. When I cross-checked those against public complaint records to the city council, patterns emerged. A complaint in March. A black father called the police after his son's noise-canceling headphones were removed by a woman at the park. April, a Latina mother, reported graffiti on her daughter's sensory garden. Stop Being Special was spray-painted in red June. A flyer anonymously mailed to a family with an autistic son, reading "Maybe you belong somewhere quieter." The same names kept popping up in the reports: Karen Whalen, Marjorie Feldman, Don Rutledge, the fake HOA. But what clinched it was a complaint buried in city archives, a formal grievance filed by a woman named Cora Simmons. Her daughter Jess was blind and had tactile markers along their fence for wayfinding. The markers were removed, claimed they were unaesthetic. Cora had written Karen called them unsightly dots. I stared at that phrase for a long time. Unsightly dots. I looked back at my daughter's scraped cheek still healing, and I decided I'd had enough. The next morning, I called Cora Simmons. "Hello," she answered hesitantly. "Hi, this is Elijah Rivers. I found your name in a city complaint record. I believe your daughter Jess had issues with the same person who hurt my daughter." A pause, Karen, yes, silence. Then a breath. I didn't think anyone else would speak up. "I'm speaking up," I said, "and I'm not alone." Over the next week, I met with Cora in person, then with David Green, the father of the boy, with the headphones, then with Elena Rojas, whose garden was vandalized. Every story followed the same arc. Karen, or one of her officers, would approach, suggest changes, criticize parenting, reference neighborhood integrity, then escalate. Sometimes it was subtle anonymous notes or passive-aggressive emails. Sometimes it was direct verbal harassment, trespassing, even public shaming. But the core pattern was clear. Families with children who were different were being targeted. "This isn't just about my daughter falling," I told them during a backyard meeting one humid Sunday. "It's about control, it's about erasure, and it ends now." Cora leaned forward. "What can we do? The police don't listen. The city claims it's a neighbor dispute." I smiled tightly. "We don't go to the police, not yet. First we document, build the timeline, identify the pattern." I laid out the plan like an operation, because it was one. Compile testimonies, written statements from every family targeted. Collect digital evidence, posts, photos, screenshots from the Facebook group. Record behavior, video footage from playgrounds, doorbell cameras, or even old photos with timestamps. Draft legal analysis. I'd use my DOJ expertise to identify civil rights violations and ADA infractions. "And the final phase, expose her," I said publicly. "On our terms," Elena blinked. "Won't that make us look petty?" "Not if we tell the truth," I said, and let her words hang herself. 1 week later, a bombshell dropped. David Green messaged me a link to a private Google Drive folder he'd been sent by mistake. It was from Marjorie Feldman, Karen's second-in-command, meant for another committee member, but sent to David's Gmail because of autocomplete. Inside were minutes from their internal meetings, typed minutes with names, dates, direct quotes. Things like, "Avoid the term disabled in emails, say non-compliant devices. We need to prevent playground chaos. Special needs equipment makes the area feel cluttered. Families that don't align with the neighborhood vision should feel unwelcome." I read that sentence twice, then a third time. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a Karen problem. This was systemic discrimination under the thin veil of neighborhood harmony. They thought we'd stay quiet, but we weren't just victims. We were the spark. I've studied authoritarian regimes, psychological warfare, and how silence enables cruelty, but nothing compared to the precision of suburban exclusion disguised as community care. And now I had enough evidence to pierce the mask. The plan was simple: show the world exactly who Karen Whalen really was, using her own words, her own actions, and her own arrogance. The same woman who made my daughter bleed, because she disrupted the flow of a playground, would finally face real consequences, and we were just getting started. Monday, 8:43 a.m., launch day, I uploaded the video to a private Vimeo link. It was 5 minutes long, tight, factual, devastating. It opened with footage of Lila falling, captured by our Ring camera from across the playground. Her braces tangled, her shriek, Karen standing above her clipboard, in hand. Then a slow fade to Karen's voice from the committee meeting minutes. Families that don't align with the neighborhood vision should feel unwelcome. Then cut to black-white text. How far will you let this go? Finally, testimonies. Cora, speaking about her blind daughter David with his son's broken headphones. Elena weeping in her destroyed garden, all calm, all composed, all powerful. At 9:12 a.m., we launched the Are Not in My Playground campaign. I posted it from my DOJ-verified personal account with one line. My daughter was pushed because of her disability. This is Karen Whalen. Let's talk about ableism hiding behind HOA rules. By 11:00 a.m., it had 8,000 shares. By 2:00 p.m., I got a call from a journalist at ProPublica. By sundown, every major news outlet in the state had emailed me. Karen didn't respond at first. She wasn't even online, but others in her fake HOA were. They tried to dismiss the footage as edited, said it lacked context, said Lila tripped on her own. They should have stopped there. Instead, Karen did what Karen always did. She fought fire with gasoline. Wednesday, Karen appeared on a local AM radio show. Her voice was steady, but her words cracked with condescension. I'm being targeted because I care about safety. We can't have chaos on our streets. These special groups think rules don't apply to them. These special groups, that was the phrase that ended her. Within an hour, the clip was circulating on TikTok under captions like, Karen thinks disabled kids are chaos now, and she said the quiet part out loud. A disability rights activist group filed an official ADA complaint against Karen and her committee for harassment and exclusion. I helped them draft the legal brief. By Friday, Karen's face was on CNN. But what she didn't know, what no one outside our group knew, was that I wasn't finished. We still had the Google Drive folder from Marjorie Feldman, the minutes, the statements. The emails marked private and tucked inside was the proof of Karen's crowning mistake. She'd tried to convince a city employee to rezone the playground into an HOA-controlled property. The bribe was small, just a charity donation with conditions. But it was enough. Enough for a criminal investigation. I forwarded the file to a DOJ contact. Within 72 hours, the City Ethics Board had opened a formal case. The city employee turned whistleblower, and a subpoena was issued. Karen went dark. The next week, our group, now called the Willow Springs Families for Inclusion, held a press conference on the playground, where it all began. Cora stood beside me. Lila sat in her lap, her braces shiny and new, decorated in pink unicorn stickers. Cameras buzzed. Reporters whispered. Parents lined the sidewalk with signs that read, "Access is a right, indifferent is beautiful." I took the podium. My daughter was hurt not just by a fall, I began. She was hurt by a belief system that says conformity is safety and diversity is disruption. But that belief system ends today because we're not going anywhere and we're not afraid to speak. Applause, tears, real change. Karen's home was vandalized that weekend. Not by us, I would never condone that. But someone had spray-painted the words "shame" across her garage. The city had assigned a police detail to monitor her home. Irony, I suppose. Her employer, a mid-sized accounting firm, terminated her due to values misalignment. Her committee dissolved under pressure. The group's Facebook page was deleted. HOA cosplay was done. But the best moment came quietly. A letter arrived in our mailbox, no return address. Inside was a simple note. You gave us a voice. Thank you. A father whose son never felt welcome until now. I folded it gently and placed it in my drawer. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were leaders. In Karen, she finally learned what it felt like to be pushed out, but not because she was different, because she chose cruelty over compassion, and the world saw it for what it was. Karen Whalen vanished for 3 days. After the press conference, after the subpoenas, after the whole country saw her sneer into a microphone and say the words, "special group," she went completely offline. No posts, no interviews, no HOA reminders. Printed in bold times, new Roman font slipped into mailboxes. Just silence, but silence doesn't erase consequence. It only delays it, and reckoning doesn't come with pitchforks in 2025. It comes with policy lawsuits and parents with memories sharper than razors. Day one of the reckoning, the City Hall showdown. It started with a council meeting. The chamber was packed, not just with us, but with neighbors we'd never even met. Grandparents, school teachers, teens holding homemade signs. My daughter sat on the aisle seat in her pink hoodie braces, gleaming her eyes darting between faces like she was learning the rules of a new world. When Karen entered, the room dropped to a hush. She looked smaller than I remembered. No clipboard, no pastel armor, just a beige blazer over a white blouse and trembling fingers, clutching a statement. She tried to read it. I never meant to harm anyone. My only intent was to preserve the standards that make Willow Springs a safe, respectful community. The mayor stopped her. Mrs. Whalen, we have documentation that suggests otherwise. She froze. He lifted the printed meeting minutes from the Google Drive folder, now public record. You referred to a blind child's navigation tools as unsightly dots. You encouraged the discouragement of families who didn't align with the vision. You attempted to rezone a playground to restrict access. Karen's mouth opened and closed. No sound came. The mayor continued. Under California Civil Code, Section 51, the Unruh Civil Rights Act, you may be personally liable for discrimination. We have referred your actions to the city attorney's office, and your group will no longer be recognized in any official capacity. The room erupted. Applause. Some gasps. One woman, the grandmother of a disabled boy, stood and shouted, "Shame on you." And for the first time, Karen sat down. Quiet, defeated. Day two. Legal fire. By the next morning, 3 lawsuits had been filed. Cora and Jess's case, ADA violation and emotional damages. Ours, intentional infliction of harm on a minor with a disability. The Green family, a class action suit representing all targeted families. We weren't suing to destroy her. We were suing to teach her and others like her that cruelty under the guise of standards would never again be tolerated. Karen's legal team tried a settlement. Quiet money confidentiality. We refused. Instead, we demanded 3 things. A formal public apology broadcast by the city, a fund to support adaptive playground equipment across the county, Karen's removal from all community boards and committees. Her lawyers balked, but by then her reputation was scorched earth. No firm would touch her. No neighbor defended her, even her longtime co-chair. Marjorie Feldman moved out of town citing medical stress. By day 5, Karen accepted the terms. Day 6, public apology. It was held at the very park where she hurt my daughter. Karen stood on the same turf where Lila once fell. Cameras swirled. Lila sat next to me, hand in mine. Heart pounding so hard I could feel it through her sleeve. I want to say, "I'm sorry," Karen began, her voice shaky. To Lila, to every family I hurt. I let my fear of difference become cruelty, and I let that cruelty become control. I am ashamed, and I hope to begin repairing what I've broken. I didn't clap. I didn't boo, because apologies are easy. What comes after is what matters. Day 7, what comes after. We didn't expect the ripple. Local news went national. Then came the interviews. Good Morning America called. A Netflix producer reached out. But I wasn't interested in headlines. I was interested in legacy. The Willow Springs Act, as the city called it, was passed 2 weeks later. It mandated ADA-compliant upgrades to all playgrounds and public buildings. A ban on unregulated neighborhood councils issuing directives without municipal authority. Required sensitivity training for all registered community associations. Our group, now renamed Families Forward, partnered with schools and parks. We built mentorship programs. Lila drew the first draft of the new playground expansion, which now includes her favorite spiral slide, twice the size, rainbow-colored. She calls it the Ramp of Justice. Karen Whalen moved out 2 months later. No one knows where she went. Her house sat vacant until a family with 3 children, one in a wheelchair, bought it. I left her a note in the mailbox. This neighborhood is finally yours too. Welcome home. Healing doesn't happen with headlines. It happens slowly between scraped knees and soft apologies, in chalk drawings and shared benches, in a girl's laughter echoing down a new ramp that didn't exist 3 months ago. But this isn't just a story about one girl or one monster in pearls. It's a story about what happens when a community stops whispering and starts building. 3 months later, the playground ribbon cutting drew hundreds. Lila wore her new braces, custom painted with stars and lightning bolts. She stood beside the mayor holding the giant red scissors in both hands. She looked nervous, her eyes flitting toward me. I nodded once. "You're the one who made this happen," I whispered. She smiled with a loud snip. The ribbon fluttered to the turf, and the crowd erupted. Kids raced forward, some in wheelchairs, some with crutches, some barefoot. The new features glowed in the sunlight: wide ramps, sensory stations, braille panels, padded floors, shaded swings. It was alive, and no one was left behind. Cora wept beside me. David held a camera. Elna handed out popsicles. Families that once considered moving away now stood shoulder to shoulder, talking like old friends. And behind them all, carved into a polished steel plaque near the park's new entrance, were these words in honor of every child who was told they didn't belong: "This space is for you." Willow Springs, families forward. The national shift. What began as a viral clip and one man's fury spread across the country like wildfire. Municipalities from Oregon to Florida requested copies of our policy reforms. The Department of Justice reached out to collaborate on new training modules about neighborhood discrimination. Disability rights coalitions launched a Playgrounds for All initiative, citing our story as the spark. I testified twice on Capitol Hill, not as a war crimes analyst, but as a father. When a senator asked why this mattered more than all the foreign trials I'd participated in, I said, "Because what we tolerate at home defines who we are abroad. If we can't protect our own children from cruelty, we've already lost." They gave me a standing ovation, but it wasn't mine. It belonged to Lila Karen's legacy. Strangely, it was Karen's voice that reappeared last 6 months after her departure. She published a blog post titled, "The Mirror I Refuse to Face." In it, she described her upbringing in a community that prized conformity above compassion. She admitted her fear of disability stemmed from ignorance, from control, from shame. "I hurt people in the name of order," she wrote. "But order without humanity is just oppression." It wasn't redemption, but it was reflection. I printed it, not to forgive her, but to remember what unchecked fear can become and what happens when we don't look away. Lila today. She runs now. Well, not fast, not like the other kids, but faster than before. She's not afraid of the slide anymore. In fact, she's usually the one encouraging others to go down it, especially the ones who hesitate. She started drawing again too, sketched an entire comic series called Brace Girl, a superhero who uses metal legs to leap over injustice. Issue number 3 is titled Karen's Kryptonite. I framed it. As for me, I still work for the DOJ, still study atrocities, still file reports on the worst humanity has to offer. But now I see the work differently. Because sometimes the battlefield isn't overseas, it's a swing set, a sidewalk, a park bench. Sometimes the monsters aren't in uniforms. They're your neighbor across the hedge. And sometimes justice comes not with gavel or gun, but with a child getting back up. The closing words. This community isn't perfect. We still argue over street noise and garbage bins, but the difference now, we listen, we look, we speak. Because we learned through one terrible fall that silence is the greatest accomplice of all. So the next time someone tells you it's just the rules, look closer, ask whose rules and who do they exclude. And if you find the answer is cruelty dressed as policy, then raise your voice, raise your hand, raise your child to believe they belong exactly as they are. Thus, see the end.